Can people start to take their seats, please? We are only a couple of minutes off. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Planning Committee, including those watching online. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security door to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the Green, where officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return the chamber. Does anyone intend to film or record audio of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Alban. No. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas, we don't have anyone, may have their image captured, and I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls or messages in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. I have the following members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. It's items 5C and both Councillor Rees-Pugh and Councillor Abby Smith. I have apologies from Councillor Dennis and Councillor Green, and I also have apologies from Councillor Rizeki, who is substituted by Councillor Wright, who isn't here yet, but is on her way, I think. Okay, was there anything else, Councillor Packman?
No, she just asked me to say she'll be a few minutes late, because we was at the same event, so she'll be on her way.
All right, so she's on her way, thank you. Councillor Garner is also on his way as well, so although we can see he's not here. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Alban and Councillor Keane and Councillor Bright?
Yes, Chair.
I'll let Councillor Alban speak for all three of you, I think.
For item 4A and 6 as Cabinet members. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes from the 18th of June. Do members agree that minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 18th of June 2025 be approved as a correct record? And do I have a proposer, Councillor Alban, and a seconder, Councillor Bright? Thank you. Do all members agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, any site visits will take place for committee members on the morning of Friday the 1st of August 2025. And now I will hand over to the Planning Applications Manager to provide an update on planning applications due to be reported back to the Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Just to provide a quick update to members on 2 items that are due to return to Planning Committee. So the application at 2 to 3 the Broadway, Ramsgate, which was reported to members in February, which proposed the approval to change the operating hours. Members deferred to bring back a report to the Planning Committee to consider potential reasons for refusal for the application on the grounds of noise and disturbance to neighbouring properties. Since then, both planning and environmental health officers have visited the site and have considered further submissions from the applicant. At this point, though, there's no resolution that's been found, and therefore the application will be returned to members for determination. We are looking at August's Planning Committee for that, if possible. And on the application for Piermont Park, which came before members in the May Planning Committee, again, similar recommendation to bring back a report with potential reasons for refusal. That will be returned to members for decision at the August Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you. That moves us on to public speaking, and the first item, agenda item 4B, Ivor Thomas Amusements. Speaking in favour of the application, I have Ms. Rebecca Alexander. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. This application seeks approval for 9 one- and 2-bedroom apartments at 100 Grange Road on a previously developed and sustainably located site within walking distance of Ramsgate Town Centre, train station and local park. The site already benefits from prior approval for change of use from office to residential. The existing building, although attractive on its frontage, has undergone such significant alterations its original character has been compromised. Due to the poor condition of the building fabric and the extensive work needed to meet current housing standards, renovation is not financially viable. The building is not listed, not located within a conservation area, and the Conservation Officer has raised no objections to its demolition. Concerns around overdevelopment have been addressed through careful massing and design. The existing building is modest in scale compared to its immediate neighbours, providing scope for an appropriate increase in scale. The proposed 4-storey building will read as 3 stories within the street scene, due to its position within the site's natural slope and with the top floor recessed and finished with a mansard roof to reduce its visual impact. The proposed building steps down in height towards the rear, creating a clear transition and scale that allows it to sit comfortably between taller frontage on Grange Road and the smaller terraced houses on Lawn Road. The design has been developed and refined in response to feedback from the local authority and local residents. 2 public consultation events were held, and revisions have included a reduction in scale, the reintroduction of on-site parking, and the retention of the flint wall. Throughout, the aim has been to create a high-quality residential development that respects its surroundings and makes most efficient use of the brownfield site in line with NPPF policy. The building presents a carefully considered contemporary design that responds to the site's context and constraints, while drawing reference from the neighbouring Victorian villas. The proposal enhances pedestrian access arrangements through the provision of universal step-free access. 4 on-site parking spaces are provided at the rear, with space for 2 further on-street bays. A parking survey confirms that the remaining demand can be accommodated within a short walking distance. The impact on neighbouring properties has been carefully addressed through offsetting the building from all boundaries, the use of obscured glazing to flank windows, and massing that respects a 45-degree line from neighbouring properties. A communal screen terrace is provided on the lower flat roof, with several apartments also benefiting from private gardens and balconies. Landscaping has increased overall. This is a well-considered proposal that makes effective use of a brownfield site whilst helping Thanet District Council to meet housing need in a sustainable location while respecting the character and scale of its surroundings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now hand over to the Planning Applications Manager to give us the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is outlined in red. So the application is for the demolition of the existing building, number 100 Grange Road, with the erection of a 4-storey building containing 9 flats comprising 7 2-bed flats and 2 1-bed flats, with a vehicular access to the rear of the site from Lawn Road that you can see on the image wrapping around the back to provide 4 car parking spaces in the rear area of the site. So this is an aerial image of the site. So the office building itself is in this location here, which is the sort of the grey roof. You can see the development that's occurred in Lawn Road, which we'll talk about in a little bit, for a number of residential properties that have occurred in the last few years. This is the property in question. The main issues for the application relate to the principal development, impact on character and appearance of the area, impact on living conditions, and impact on highways. So going through the photos then, looking to the right-hand side of the site, you have 102 Grange Road. So you can see that there is a change of level from neighbouring properties along the road where it's sloping up to the north. You've then, looking to the left, you've got Thomas Terry's house, which is 6 flats, with obviously a different design in that, in comparison to the other properties along there. Generally, the office building that's on the site, whilst being slightly unique in terms of its the detailing that's around the bay windows, and I mean the colour scheme that's been sort of chosen, mimics quite a lot of the sort of bay window style that you've got in Grange Road, this bit of Grange Road and the opposite side. As mentioned, we have looked at whether or not that the building itself constitutes a non-designated heritage asset. It's not considered that it would warrant retention, and the demolition of it is considered to be acceptable. You can actually see, though, through to the back of the properties on Lawn Road, and we'll just look down that gap between the flats next door and the application site. So you can see there are some side windows on the flats here. Looking at them in a bit more detail, they are obviously they've got obscure glazing for the first floor windows, with the lower ground floor windows being clear glazed, but obviously blocked by virtue of the existing boundary wall. And then this is looking through to the rear yard area of the office, which is where the parking area will be. And you can see again these dwellings that were built around the back off Lawn Road. This is turning back around, so looking at the existing vehicular access onto Grange Road. The drop curb that's here is proposed to be removed, so it's going to be brought back to being just a footway with no vehicular access from Grange Road. Actually, you can see, again, some of the more modern development which occurred on the corner not that long ago, to show some of the style of the other new development that's occurred in the area. So this is an image taken from Google satellite images, just showing, again, that dropping down in terms of the scale of buildings from the right-hand side of the image to the north, through to the south on the left-hand side of the image. And again, you can see the rear of those properties on Lawn Road there. So then on the right-hand side of the building, just looking down the gap between 100 and 102, mention's been made of the flint wall on the left-hand side, so that is the actual boundary of the site. This actually is sort of within the site of 102, and then if you can look at the, you can see obviously the side elevation of that, so you can see quite how high that building is because of the change in levels that you've got across the site. And then this is sort of further down that, just looking towards, again, those properties at the back of Lawn Road. So you can see the relationship. It's quite a tight relationship, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail. And then just this is a turning to the right to see, again, to show the rear of those buildings again. And so you can actually see where the gap is, where the vehicular access will be into the back of the site. So this is a different 3D image, just showing, again, so you can see the vehicular access that will be used to access the site via Lawn Road, coming in this area here where the mouse pointer is. So you can see the rear of the building, which has obviously been used as an office. So it's got first floor windows at the moment. It has a basement level at the front. As we'll look through the images, the front has got the capacity for more floors than the back, because the level goes up at the back as well as going side to side with an uplift. And this site sits higher than the neighbouring site with the flats, where they also have a rear parking area at the moment. So there's no private amenity space at the rear of the flats. So this is just the site plan, again, showing the existing situation. So again, this area here is where that parking area was behind the flats at the moment. So there's no private amenity space in the neighbouring property there, but there is private amenity space at the rear of 102 Grange Road. So these are the elevations of the existing building. So you can see on the bottom right-hand image there, those windows at first floor at the moment. And then this is the floor plan. Again, it's just floor plans of the office building as it is, but as this is going to be demolished, I'll move on to the proposal. So this is a site plan showing the proposal in a bit more detail. So you can see the parking area at the rear on the left-hand side. At the front, it's proposed to have a landscaped area with the bin storage at the front, and there's a bike store at the side. We'll look at the actual building in a bit more detail when we're looking at the floor plans, but they are proposing to put solar PV on the roof. And as mentioned, there is a shared area that's been put forward at first floor level at the rear to be screened by a 1.8 metre privacy screen, which we'll look at in a bit of detail as well. So in terms of the principle of development, it is redevelopment within an urban area. It's in accordance with policy. It's providing 9 flats, and therefore positive weight should be given to the fact that it's providing housing when there is an identified need. I would just like to dwell on one point with regards to the officer report, which in the principal development section talks about the particular need for the council about its 5-year supply. And it uses pretty standard wording that you will have seen before that identifies that there is a 3.18 years of supply that we can demonstrate, which is less than the 5-year supply, which means that we are in presumption in favour of sustainable development, and you have to have very good reasons to refuse something when there is the need for housing. Very recently, in fact, as recent as after the agenda was finalised, our local plan is now over 5 years old. What that means is that we will now revert to the national way that you work out your housing numbers on a yearly basis. So we're not basing it on the step requirement within our local plan. There will be a report coming to Cabinet in due course setting out the position. Whilst this will show, or is expected to show, an increase in our 5-year supply of housing land that we can demonstrate above 3.18 years, it will not reach 5 years, and we still unfortunately fail the housing delivery test. So we are still in presumption, but in terms of what the report is saying, it's actually slightly higher than it's currently demonstrating. So we are still in the same situation, though, in terms of significant weight should be put on the new housing that's being provided. So in terms of the existing street scene, so property is in the centre of the site here. So what's being proposed, as mentioned, is a 4-storey building. However, the lower ground floor is being sunk down with some excavation at the front, and so the front of the property has a sort of a lower ground floor which is not replicated at the back. So you'll see when we look at the sections that the ground floor, or the upper ground floor of the building, effectively is at the same level as the rear of the site. So you have a change in design of the building with not quite a flat facade, but you have a flat facade with, there we go, a mansard roof. What you've got is a parapet at the top with 2 balconies. So you've got a lower ground floor accretion at the front with a balcony on top of it, and you've then got the balcony serving the flat at the roof level. So this is an image which is showing, I suppose, the true elevation of the building, but obviously that bottom floor you will not see because of the fact that the street level will obscure most of that, and we'll see some 3Ds that will just confirm that. So looking at the 3D images that have been provided, it's our view that different cues have been taken from different features in the area. Obviously, in terms of the fenestration pattern, the regularity of the windows and the size of the windows, cues are being taken from the neighbouring property on the right-hand side, 102. You have brick, which is very similar, which again we'll look at in a bit more detail, that's taking cues from the area. Whilst there is an absence of bay windows, which again is one of those characteristics and vernacular that you can see in the area, it's not considered the lack of that is causing a particular issue in terms of the design. It doesn't appear too obtrusive. And in terms of the height, which is obviously different from the building on site at the moment, if we go back to the street scene, it is higher than the building to the left of it, the flats. whilst it is higher than the building that's on site at the moment by virtue of the fact that it's slightly above the ridge height, but obviously it's got extra floors. You have an extra bulk at roof level, but because of the way that the road, as you can see, slopes up, it is considered that the site can support a development of this height. So just to go through some of the other images of the front elevation. And then that's a view. So this is just to demonstrate, again, that change in level that you've got. So that the landscaping is going to be at street level with then the access going down. So the excavation isn't going to be the full front garden area. It's only really going to be in front of the facade of the building. And then this is a view that's been provided by the applicant, just showing down the street, so showing the bulk of the other properties. So you will see the side elevation, the extent of the building, and you will see the balcony. We don't consider that the balconies in the wider context of the area are out of keeping. It is acknowledged that there aren't any balconies in this part of Grange Road, but further down Grange Road you have many more balconies from different developments that have occurred over the last 20 years. So just in terms of the materials, there has been a change during the course of the application. Originally that roof, I suppose, element, or what's now really a mansard, was proposed to be render. This is now to be slate. It is proposed to be grey UPVC windows. Again, we're not in a conservation area. UPVC is considered to be acceptable in this area. And they have proposed a particular type of brick, which is on the right-hand side here. And so we are looking to condition the details as per this plan in terms of what will be constructed, and we do think that would be suitable for the area. So just to show the relationship in terms of the front to back of the site, as mentioned, so this is the existing section looking through, and you can see 102 Grange Road in the backdrop of the site. So that's the existing building. Then this is the proposed building, so you can see where the excavation occurs to be able to get that floor in, but then the rear of the site is at the same level as that upper ground floor. And to give you an idea of what that looks like as a section, you can see then the unit that's on the lower ground floor that we'll see, and then you can see that it's sort of split level as you go up the building. This is the first look of the area, the amenity space as a balcony area that would be a communal space accessible by all of the flats at first floor level at the rear, which is where the mouse pointer is. And then this is the opposite elevation, so looking from the north to the south. The windows, sorry, I should have mentioned, the windows on here at the first floor and above windows are to be obscure glazed on the side elevations of the building, similar on this side elevation as well. You can see here what's been put forward as a planted visibility screen. We have asked for further details of this because whilst the idea of having something that's planted is certainly welcomed, it's considered that you will need the standard privacy screen of obscure glazing, and then the planting can be the other side of that. But so we do need to have that obscure glazed privacy screen because we can't rely on landscaping to make sure that privacy of neighbours is secured. So then this is the rear elevation of the building. So you can see it's effectively three stories at the back. These windows have been designed on the accretion at the back to be oriel windows, so they're directing views in a particular area. So we'll look at that on the site plan in a minute. You can see again what's been indicated in terms of the planting. There are windows at the roof level facing back towards the neighbouring properties at the rear. You can also see the change in level between the flats next door to the south and the difference there. So in terms of the ground floor plan, you can see there are the three flats that are provided here. Unit 1 has a private garden area, a very small sort of yard area that it can access via the side of the building. The pedestrian access to the rear to get to the cycle store, which is in this area, runs down the right-hand side of the property. You can see there is the areas for bin storage at the front. And then you have the 4 parking spaces at the rear with the proposal to install landscaping, both some more ornamental landscaping planting at the front and then to the rear as well. There is a condition proposed to get details of species. We haven't secured those details as yet, and we'll get those details in as part of the planning conditions. So you can start to see the windows here proposed on the rear units. Just looking at the first floor plan, So this is, I suppose it's actually sort of the upper ground floor plan to show where you have the windows that will face towards the neighbouring properties but have been angled so they're facing down in this area here. The rationale behind that is to extend the distance between the neighbours at the rear. The neighbours at the rear are already, as we'll show, considered to be overlooked. There is a lack of privacy in those rear gardens at the moment, but still there needs to be, for this area at the back here, the windows should really be angled away to try and minimise a perception of overlooking and to maximise the distance that direct views would occur. So you're facing more towards the neighbouring gardens at the back, which actually are already overlooked by the flats to the south. And then this is a plan, again, you've got the standard layout where you've got 2 flats with a central core staircase where the communal area is going to be at the upper level. It has been considered about doorstop play space. We wouldn't normally look at having balcony areas as considered to be doorstop play space. So this is clearly of benefit to the future residents to have this space, but it isn't considered by us to be suitable for children to use in the same sort of way. It's not directly visible from all the flats. However, the site is constrained. It is a trade-off between having a rear amenity space and getting parking, and this does result in the redevelopment and the provision of 9 flats. So we do think this is a balanced, acceptable relationship to not have just a rear amenity area at the rear and to get the 4 car parking spaces, and I'll come on to the highway impact of why that's necessary. And then this is the roof unit, so they have their own balcony area at the front. So 2 of the units have their own private amenity spaces, the rest can use the communal space on top. So this is a different Google image showing the rear of the building where the conservatory is there, but you can see with regards to the relationship where there are existing windows at the rear of the flats that face towards the neighbouring properties at the rear. So it isn't considered that the addition of windows at the rear of this property angled away from the neighbours immediately behind would result in a significant loss of privacy, because it's not considered that there is a significant degree of privacy at the moment, and there is a trade-off between trying to find development that could occur on this site to both maximise the number of units possible while safeguarding as much as possible the impact on neighbours. But that, it is a tight relationship around there, and that is found throughout the area. So just to confirm that, this is the rear elevation of the building as it is now. So again, you've got those first floor windows which already look towards the neighbouring properties directly to the rear, and then you've then got the windows at the first floor, and then the roof windows which are further away. So you're looking at about 21 metres to the rear of the properties from the roof windows. Usually it would be a 21 metre back-to-back distance that we used to use in the old Kent design guide. It is much more on a case-by-case basis now, but again, there are extenuating factors here, the fact that there are existing windows facing towards the rear. So this is just a 3D just showing the proposal from the applicant's perspective. And then this is just a confirmation again of where that space is, where the parking comes in, and the neighbouring properties. So this is just to confirm in terms of the privacy screen. So this is a section just showing the communal amenity area that's being provided. You can see the height of the privacy screen there, which is the 1.8 metres. Again, there is the condition that's being proposed on that, which is Condition 5, which is requiring prior to the occupation of any of the units, further details are provided of the privacy screen to make sure that that is secured and in place prior to occupation of any dwellings. And this is a view from the rear of 102 Grange Road. Again, 3D image provided by the applicant here to just give the perspective, but you can see the general area where both the windows are, which won't have direct views, but they're the more standard to the rear views that you'd get from the roof level, but then where the this sort of communal terraced area is. So in terms of parking, as mentioned, there are 4 car parking spaces that are being provided as part of this off-road and on the site. Now, there is a requirement for this number of units to have 11 spaces normally, because it's 9 units and then a provision for visitors, so 2 spaces for visitors. That's obviously not feasible to provide on the site. It's not big enough. You can't do it. So therefore, it has to be looked at about what the parking capacity is in the area. And some of these roads are quite heavily parked, and there are parking restrictions in the area. So this is a plan that has been provided as part of a submission which has been looked at by Highways. The yellow areas, the yellow lines related to the roads, are all of the roads that have parking restrictions on, so you cannot park in those areas. So in particular, with the parking beat survey that was required to be provided, areas were looked at on Picton Road and Dundonald Road specifically to look at in the daytime and in the evening what the parking capacity was, what the parking allowance was, and what therefore the parking stress was in those areas. It is really important to note that this is a hugely sustainable location. It's within 250 metres of a bus stop. It's within probably the same sort of amount to get to the shops that are just down there. It's within about, I'm going to say, it's probably about 750 metres from the station. It's within 800 metres radius. So it is really sustainable, and therefore just on that basis alone, providing 4 spaces and being in that location, Highways did find to be, beneficial. However, it is still important to consider what the impact on the parking in the area is, because people will have cars and they will park in the area. So what this is a table that's been submitted by the applicant, which has been agreed by Highways from their own understanding of the situation in the area, which is looking at how many parking spaces there are on the particular roads surrounding the site. It's then looking at a daytime measurement and then an evening nighttime measurement on a Monday and a Wednesday respectively of how many vehicles were parked and how many spaces there were when looking at the distances. So Highways have agreed with the potential number of spaces in an area and then looked at the number of parked vehicles and then the free spaces. So the percentages that have been provided relate to it's referred to as parking stress, but really it's about the percentage of those parking spaces that are filled within that period. Now, what that shows is that on Grange Road itself, to the north of Grange Road, so the north part of the site, there aren't very many in this example that's been given free spaces on Grange Road itself. But the areas that are particularly looked at on Dundonald Road and Picton Road, so the site is in red here where the mouse is circling. You've got Picton Road here, and then Dundonald Road here. You have got, on this example that's been provided, there is some capacity within those areas. Even at night time, there was still in the examples provided 8 spaces on either road at night time, and then with further free spaces during the day. Obviously, you're looking at a 200 metre radius around the site. That's considered to be the area that people would walk from the site to their cars reasonably. And with this evidence, with Highways agreeing that it does give an accurate representation, or a representative representation, I should say, of the area, it has been considered that the amount of parking that's provided on site is acceptable to avoid there being an unacceptable impact from this number of dwellings in the area. So just to pick up a couple of other points, as a wrap up, there are conditions that are proposed to ensure that the risks of potential contamination are considered. So these are conditions that came forward a bit from the previous use of the building, but just generally have been submitted, and I think the Environment Agency have given us comment on that. So there are pre-commencement conditions related to just assessing whether or not there is any contamination risk from developing the site. Similarly, there is a Grampian condition related to drainage, because there is a comment from Southern Water that raises issues with the combined sewer and the capacity of increasing the use of the connection on this site. Now, we've obviously got to remember there is an existing connection, but obviously the load from an office is different from the load from 9 flats. So that is a Grampian condition, and that is obviously how we would normally look to deal with these things, to ensure that that's looked at when the construction is being planned in more detail. The application is recommended to defer and delegate for approval because we do need to secure the SAM's contribution for 9 additional units being provided on the site. But the application is recommended to be deferred and delegated for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions and for that legal agreement to secure the contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of people who have indicated to speak. I just will comment first. Councillor Green, unfortunately, is not able to be here, and he did call this in, and it's just a reminder that I'm sure he'd want to raise his concerns about the potential overdevelopment of the site, the impact on street scene, the lack of parking and recreational space, at least one of which I completely concur with. It's well known what my views on parking are. I'll hand over to Councillor Bright first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian. I agree with the point that Councillor Green has raised about parking. However, obviously, if highways are saying it's acceptable, I think we need to go with that. What my questions are, overall, I think the proposal is really strong. I've got slight concerns. Firstly, what is the basement flat at the front? What's the feeling on the natural light to that flat? Because I'm just thinking, it looks to me, and this is kind of joined up with my next question, is how much of the gap between the neighbour to the south is being closed with this development? Because clearly there was a wide enough gap for cars to get down. Now it's been brought closer. I'm slightly concerned with, again, the natural light on the neighbour to the south and the natural light going into that basement flat.
So in terms of the flats that obviously are at basement level, so there are two looking on the right hand side of this plan that you've got. The primary windows face towards the road to ensure that they're trying to maximise the light that you can get into the main habitable spaces. It is proposed that there is a light well on the flat number 2 which is, I'll just circle where that is, which is to serve one of the bedrooms at the back there. So they will get light through it, but they won't have outlook. So that's something that's talked about in the report. To pick up your point about the impact on the neighbouring property, they are secondary windows on the side elevation. So they are at first floor and above. They are all obscure glazed. They are serving bathrooms. It is getting close to the building, as you say. It's going to be a metre off the side, so it will enclose any light that would occur to those bathrooms. But it's not considered that would have a detrimental impact that we could sort of sustain an objection on, because it's not a habitable space in terms of the expectation of light to bathrooms or secondary side windows. In terms of the quality of accommodation, I think that there is an argument to suggest that it's not ideal in terms of that you don't have outlook that isn't in any way sort of obscured by something. For example, at the front here, you obviously will have some amenity space, and then you will jump up to, if I go to the image of the street scene, there we go, that's probably the best thing to show you. So this is the section, so you can see the window, and then you can see the level that you've got in terms of where the road is. So you can see that you do have outlook that's going to go up and over, and it is considered that you would get adequate light in there from that. And the size of those flats is also above the nationally described space standards, as well as the fact that the flat to the bottom there, again, whilst it is a small rear yard, there is a rear yard, there is additional space. Obviously the flat to the northern part of the site doesn't have that, admittedly, but it still has access to that communal area. So on balance, we think to be able to get an appropriate amount of development out the site as a brownfield site, we're not compromising too much on the quality of accommodation, and we don't think there's an impact on the neighbour to the south either.
If I can just come back really quickly, just a point of clarification. Are you saying that the gap between the properties is 1 metre, or the gap between the boundary and the edge of the property?
That boundary, yeah, the boundary. There's another metre on the other side.
Okay, Councillor Rattigan.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I think it's a very strong application. It's making really good use out of a space that, rather than, obviously, we don't want to be, the building on sort of farms and things like that. It's great use of the space. I like the way it steps down. It's all about the bin storage, which obviously we've seen some applications before where there's problems with that. And I like they're including the solar PV in the application, and then consideration for the windows being sort of angled at the rear. And overall I think it's a really good positive scheme.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, originally I was a bit concerned about the bulk of the building, but having seen the properties either side, the bulk, it isn't out of place. I see it as in place. It is bulky, but then the others are bulky. So I think it is a little bit bland, but I think the development as it's going to be, should it be approved, I'm happy that there are 2 one-bedroom flats in the building because we do need those. And I'm not too bothered about the parking. I know you will be, Chair, but I'm not too bothered about that. And I think overall, taking everything into account, I think it's, as it's been said, a strong development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I was going to ask about the solar panels. The solar panels on the roof of Unit 9 are for the whole building. So that one roof has all the solar panels for the whole building. Is that right?
I don't have those details, I'm afraid. I don't know whether or not it would relate to effectively for the top flat or whether or not it does relate to energy offsetting for the whole flat. Okay. I'm afraid I don't have that.
I've got a second question. I mean, we know much of Ramsgate doesn't have parking. It's a bit of an issue, so we're just adding a little bit to it. You mentioned a light well for one of the basement flats. So sort of like a little sort of glass roof. So will that will actually have a bedroom window as well?
So it doesn't have a glass roof. So this is the rear section of the building that you can see. The window itself is this window on the left-hand side here. So you can see, well, I refer to it as a light well. It's just the fact that you've got space above, which is open, so it's not going to have a roof on it at all. It's just literally just that the light's going to come in from the top. Now, obviously, it will be, it will be less natural light. It's not considered that it would cause an impact in terms of the requirements that you'd have under building regs in terms of size of window to size of area, which you sometimes get. But it's a reality of having the outcrop, the middle section that's protruding out, that you just don't get quite as much ability to get the outlook, and also because of to be able to get the flat access through the site to the bike store, you can't open it up anymore. So that's why it's sort of been shown as basically a hole. I'm going to call it a hole rather than a light well, that gives you a bit of light that's coming in from at the begin. Really, it's more, to be honest, it's more in the evening because of where the sun's going to come round. So it's more going to be the evening that there's going to be natural light that's really going. It's a bedroom. It's a bedroom, yeah.
Councillor Wing, did I see you indicate? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think I'm on the other side, but I do know Grange Road pretty well, actually, and having delivered leaflets like a lot of people in this room, you're constantly climbing down into bits that have very little light. So I don't see that as a particular problem, the digging down, because that's very common across in Broadstairs and Ramsgate and indeed Margate. Is the access for vehicles, it's jumped to the other side of the property away from this side of the property? Because I could see that as if it had stuck to the other side, then obviously that block of flats was used to the cars going there, and now it's been moved to the other side. So, there could be issues with that property that didn't have that access, but now is going to have cars going past. But that's just a comment. Also, there'll be an increase in waste bins, and I know they're actually located within the property, but will they be placed on the road, collected from the property, or be placed on the road? Because we're probably going from a couple of bins to 9 bins on the pavement, and the pavement's, it's fairly wide pavement there, but if it's got 9 bins in one location, it could create a problem for people in wheelchairs. So that's just, and also I think the surface behind now is it cement or tarmac?
Shall I come back on the points that you raised, if that's okay, and then we can come back. So in terms of bins, they are to go on the road. There's obviously areas that have been provided for the larger bins collectively because of the number of flats they are, and obviously we've referred the developer to the guidelines that the waste and recycling team provide about what needs to be provided at the front of the site. It will obviously, at the moment, it was a commercial office, so they will have had their own waste collection. So yes, there will be an increase, I suppose, on collection day in terms of the bins. There is the access is effectively where the vehicular access is at the moment as to where the bins will come in and out, because obviously on the other side, because of that level change, there's stairs, so you're going to be bringing them out round that bottom part of the site. Just in terms of the rear area, I imagine, I'm sort of not guessing as such, but it's going to be a concrete base with potential surface materials on there, which is likely why it's still to be used as parking in a way, with some areas being built out for landscaping. Obviously removing that base would have caused, obviously, I'm sure, some impacts in terms of cost and construction, but ultimately it's being retained as it is, so there is some improvements by virtue of trying to get some trees in there. At the moment, that's one of the reasons why we've suggested that it's sort of, well, we've accepted the fact that parking at the rear is probably the best thing. And just to pick up, sorry, your other point about vehicular access, I appreciate it was more of a comment than anything that was a query. At the rear where Lawn Road is, it does wrap around at the moment, and there's a sort of turning parking area at the moment. So it is an increase, it's some additional vehicles, but it's already a road, so it's not considered there's a significant to warrant an impact on neighbours on that.
I think my concern over the back surface was whether we're introducing something which is not porous and potentially create a flooding situation for the properties behind. Having had flooding into my property in the last 2 storms, we've got a changing situation. I still think the bins are a worry because the doctor's surgery is further up and there's a lot of people with mobility issues, but it could be a simple solution by opening up the front so that the bins can be taken straight, remain on the property and be taken out from the property. I think the old pub at St Lawrence has done that exact thing. Their bins are on the street, but they're not on the street, and there's about 7 or 8 bins and they can be taken from there. So I would still have a problem with the bins coming out on bins day, because it is a road that quite a lot of people use to obviously get to the doctor's surgery, and a lot of them have got mobility issues. But that could be resolved. That's not it could be resolved. Parking is a nightmare, and we come to parking. So I wonder if the 4 bays are going to be allocated to individual properties. That's just a bit of information. I think where parking's concerned, we do need to do something about parking, because the whole of that parking, a lot of the parking on the other side is Central Harbour. I know exactly how bad that is. It's really bad. But I think we need another process to deal with our parking, and it doesn't sit here in planning. So I guess are the 4 bays going to be allocated to each of the flats, or is it a free-for-all?
So they haven't been indicated that they're going to be allocated on the plans. We haven't proposed any allocations, so it would be, they would be unallocated spaces. And frankly, we would always expect them to be unallocated when you've got more units than flats, if you see what I mean.
I'm glad Councillor Wing said that, because that was exactly the question that I wanted to ask, and I actually would suggest that there is allocation, even though it is 9 flats, because otherwise I think you're going to have people driving in and then having to reverse out if they are not, if the spaces are all filled. So that's just something that I would suggest if this is approved, but I don't know that. Yeah.
So in terms of the particular highway safety concern that could result from having unallocated parking, because of on the image that we've got up on the screen, there is adequate turning space more than 6 metres behind to be able to turn around were someone to go in and go, oh, there's no space, to actually turn in that space, which is again something that highways have looked at. So again, ultimately it's for the developer to determine, but it's not a determinative factor in terms of impact on highway safety from KCC's perspective or from ours, I think. I understand the rationale though.
Well, if the neighbours get on, then they might actually agree to do some doubling up, but I'm sure we can't recommend that. Councillor Makinson.
Thank you. My question is also about the parking. You're accessing the parking from Lawn Road, but the red line of the site just does not include the road. Is it their road or whose road is it, and can they use it? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's part of the blue line, so it's not part of the site. I'll just go all the way back to the start. It's the blue line, so it's under their ownership, so the blue line sort of runs around, you can see. So that bit at the end where you've got into this sort of more unadopted part of the road, so that is owned under the same ownership. So there's no concern that the parking wouldn't be delivered. There is also a condition which requires the parking to be in place, again, prior to occupation, so that then it has to be laid out and has to be available before anyone can occupy the flats to ensure that we're getting those 4 spaces.
Councillor Matterface.
Just a quick one to do with the car park. It does say one of them will have an EV charger, which is obviously going to determine, because if you've got an EV, you've got to be able to charge it. So presumably that might be allocated. So that was just a passing.
Well, thank you. Oh, yes, I do have another speaker, Councillor Keane.
Just a quick thing, and that is, it says under QDO3 about clothes drying. Is there any clothes drying provision?
There isn't, and therefore it lends itself to being the need for, obviously units, Unit 1 obviously is the only one that actually has that dedicated yard area. It isn't proposed to have a distinct area within that rear area because, as with the play space, it's a balance between the different needs of the parking, the doorstep play space, that communal amenity space. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be something within the within that shared amenity area. Again, it depends on how much the residents get on, I think it's fair to say. There is obviously there is a potential knock-on impact of that, and obviously not everyone in terms of flats like this would have access to a tumble dryer. It's not a requirement that we've proposed to put on, nor would we be able to mandate that. But again, it's really a result of developing a site that is as constrained as this, that actually it's offset in this instance to provide the parking rather than, for example, a dedicated clothes drying facility. So there could be a knock-on impact in terms of the amenity of when you look at the property, but we do think that's something that can be balanced against the benefits of the parking at the rear.
Okay, so we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation, which is to defer and delegate, to the vote. Will all those in favour please indicate? And those against? And any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. So we move on to the next item, which is Chapel House Estate, Thornhill, Minster. Public speaking in favour of the application is Mr Darren Ellis. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Darren Ellis. I'm a custodian of Chapel House Estate in its 13th century Chapel House and surrounding areas. We're a business with a strong and proven track record of investing in a local community. Chapel House has played a significant role in supporting the local economy, currently employing around 50 people across its operations. We also source our produce from local suppliers, as well as growing a lot of our own produce and harvesting our own honey. This new project will build on that foundation, bringing further investment, opportunity and long-term benefit to both the Thanet economy and the broader East Kent area. The development will become a new flagship destination for family holidays. It will provide new employment opportunities during construction, even more significantly, ongoing jobs in hospitality, site management, landscape maintenance, ecology, monitoring and guest services. These jobs will be filled locally wherever possible, supporting families and helping retain the skills in the area. Importantly, the site has been designed not just to benefit the business, but to contribute meaningfully to the wider economy. Families staying at the lodges will be encouraged to explore the surrounding towns, villages, nature reserves and heritage attractions by bike or by foot, bringing an increased footfall to our local shops, restaurants, pubs and visitor venues. The project is a genuine model for environmentally conscious development and the first of its kind in East Kent. From the outset, sustainability is in the heart of our design. Each of the 50 lodges will be fitted with solar panels, all supported by a centralised battery storage area to maximise energy and resilience. Rainwater harvesting systems will be installed throughout the site to reduce our mains water usage. The development includes several standout environmental features, most notably a natural swimming lake, something currently unparalleled in the region. This will offer families a clean, chemical way to swim, relax in nature with significant ecology and well-being benefits. To manage water responsibility, the scheme includes an ecology drainage pond, not just a functional sud system, but one that produces a haven for insects, wetland plants, and contributes more of a resilient and self-sustaining environment. Tree retention and planting has been approached with the utmost care. All existing trees will be retained, preserving the mature character of the site. In addition, we will be planting a significant number of new trees, native hedgerows, wildflower meadows, creating a mosaic of habitats that will flourish under a long-term management plan. We are proud to be achieving a biodiversity net gain of 98.22% for habitats and an exceptional 194% for hedgerows. To put that in perspective, the national minimum threshold is 10%. This level of habitat creation, nearly 20 times what is required, represents a fully transformative step for our land restoration and environmental stewardship. These gains will be secured and managed for the long term under a formal ecology plan overseen by the Chapel House Biodiversity Advisor and a dedicated landscaping team. Access to... Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaking against the application, Ms Nadia Johnson.
Sorry.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Nadia Johnson. I live at Thorne Farmhouse and I object to this proposal. I could use this time to speak solely about how the quality of mine and my family's life will be affected by this proposal if given the go-ahead, how exactly the well-being of 3 generations will be affected that live in our home. However, I know you all are aware how you would feel if you got the news that where you lived and the home you had worked so hard for and put everything into was going to have a holiday park built on top of it. I appreciate that we are just one family in the scheme of things. However, we did used to be 5. I'm sure you are aware that you've had no objections from the 4 cottages. That application, since the applicant got the last decision approved, 2 families got evicted from their homes so they could be sold to the applicant for Airbnb. The other 2 cottages haven't objected as the applicant is in the process of buying them. That's 4 family homes in Minster lost to holiday lets. We are home to badgers, hares, owls, buzzards and pheasants, to name a few, and I know the applicant has proposed the positive effects it will have on wildlife. However, surely not harming their home at all is best. My biggest concern, however, is the roads. They are just not capable of supporting this proposal. The highway did initially object to a junction that is substandard. It is my understanding that this objection has been withdrawn as the applicant has proposed they will direct larger vehicles via a different route. However, when you use your sat-nav, it always directs you to this junction that's substandard, and it would be a small miracle if all visitors ignored their sat-nav. Whatever route you direct traffic, all the lanes are narrow and have blind corners. While discussing the lanes and the highway structure, the applicant stated about bikes being provided for families to use. This gives me great concern. Sadly, a cyclist that did know the roads lost his life on his way to work a few years ago on the lanes. I was one of the 3 trying to resuscitate him, and I cannot tell you how it felt to watch his body be covered with a white sheet. This was no one's fault, no one was speeding, it's just the nature of the lanes. I have stated my concerns, but I would just like to raise one last point. Under 10 minutes away from the proposed site is White Mills Water Park. They already have the lake used for open water swimming. They already have touring sites. They have a restaurant, etc. And since this application was put in, they now have luxury lodges available for tourists to enjoy. They seem very similar to the proposed ones, so I'm left wondering if this new local business is providing for the tourism needs stated, and how will this proposed site be any different to the one currently up and running a stone's throw away, one which already has the lake in place, has no neighbours and is served by A roads. Thank you.
Thank you. I have, speaking under Council Procedure Rule 20.1, Councillor Rees-Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies. I thought Councillor Smith was going to go first. Members, I come before you today to speak to Planning Committee. I'm sure you're happy that I haven't been around here recently for a while. I thought I'd have a bit of a break, or give you a bit of a break. But I'm coming to speak to you today on this application, Mainly as a past councillor for Thanet Villages, I had dealings as a ward member with this site, or the site adjacent to it, at the Chapel House estate, when the initial proposals were being brought forward. I have also tried to support residents previously in the past, including those on Thornhill, with concerns about potential speeding and traffic because of the estate opening up. That was looked into at the time by KCC Highways, who determined that there wasn't a need for any speed restrictions or speed bumps because the number of volume of vehicles and incidents reported was too low. But in relation to this application, I just want to be able to say that it's a fantastic opportunity for the local area, not just in creating at least 25 full-time jobs and some part-time jobs, but when we look at what we have on offer as a district and the lack of a holiday accommodation, and what I would argue is that if this is approved, although it is to defer and delegate tonight, if it is approved, that will then create an opportunity to have better suited, or well, more suitable holiday accommodation for the local area. We all understand and appreciate the difficulties that we have across the district with residential properties being turned into Airbnbs and the difficulties that creates for our towns and our villages. So I think that this will help to alleviate that issue. I think it's clear that the impact this can have, the positive impact this can have on the tourism industry in Thanet is quite clear. Chapel House as an estate, as a wedding and kind of venue, has been already a great success. I've attended events there myself. I've seen the work that has been done on site, and particularly the commitment that the owners have to biodiversity and to sustainability. I don't want to bore everyone, but there's a story of their biodiversity officer being caught in the bushes late at night, mainly because he was looking for badgers, but he hadn't told anyone on site that he was going to do that. So he was found whilst one of the owners was walking their dogs, and it kind of set hares racing. But that's the commitment that the Chapel House estate has to sustainability and to biodiversity. I think it's important to note that whilst this is a potential loss of agricultural farmland, as we know from previous applications before, is that, and I don't want to speak as an expert because I'm not an expert on farming, but the very nature and size of this site, I'd be very surprised if it's big enough to support at least one farm worker for an entire season. And I suspect that has a part and a role to play in why this site may also be suitable. I think that it's clear that the applicant is very committed to increasing biodiversity, and the planting of wildflower meadows will certainly help that, and to create more kind of nature corridors within our countrysides. And then my final point is that, apologies Chair, can I just quickly finish? I think it's really important to say that KCC have no objection, and clearly our own tourism team support this. So there you go.
Thank you. Councillor Abby Smith, you have 3 minutes.
Start now. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for having me, committee. I've attended 2 opening events at Chapel House, and I was largely impressed by the development, especially in terms of its stated commitment to environmental responsibility. However, since then, several large mature trees have been removed, some of which to make way for an additional parking lot. I'm concerned that some recent experiences from neighbours demonstrate that perhaps management practices are not quite adequate to protect neighbourhood amenity. I was approached by Ms. Johnson when she was in some distress and told me that her neighbourhood life had been severely disrupted by the current operation of the restaurant and event venue. In particular, I was alarmed to hear that event guests had been straying into nearby properties, that one even stumbled drunkenly into a
Councillor Smith, you need to be careful about making allegations within your speech that are not necessarily provable.
Okay.
Oh, and actually, I mean, stick to the relevance of the application itself. Thank you.
What I'm concerned about is whether there are sufficient security practices in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. I was particularly disturbed by that report. The same, I've also had reports, and again, this may require some kind of decibel count, but that very loud music is played at a disturbing volume late at night, depriving the neighbours of the peace that rural residents are entitled to expect or hope for. And the installation of a helipad really just adds insult to that audible injury. Removing several mature trees has denuded the landscape, and again, that's arguable, but it's deprived the neighbouring properties of the privacy that rural residents rightfully hope to enjoy. And I appreciate that those trees are not subject to protection orders. Can I have 15 seconds?
15 seconds.
Thank you. This destruction has also impacted local wildlife. Ms. Johnson reported finding an owl, a badger, and a buzzard all dead since these events began and after specific events. While tasteful and attractive commercial ventures...
I think that's it. Councillor Smith, please. I do think members need to be aware that Councillor Smith did stray into things that are not necessarily a part of the application itself and things that have already happened in the past. So, but thank you. I don't blame you for trying. And now I will hand over to the Principal Planning Officer to outline the report.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the application site outlined in red here. Outlined in blue is also land within the ownership of the applicant, and in this location here is the existing wedding venue with the lane running off here, with this being Thornhill to the left of this slide. So just an aerial view of that now. So Thornhill running along here, this is the access road that runs into the existing wedding venue site, also with agricultural land and the neighbouring property. This is the application site here, so this square area of field, and you can see to the north of that is existing solar panels. Obviously the A299 runs along the north and east of the area surrounding the site. And then this is just a closer up view of it. So in terms of just the history, this wedding venue site was approved through a 2021 application and included the erection of 8 guest lodges that you can see in this location here. And then just another view looking at it. So again, the application site is this area of land here in the centre of the screen, with Thornhill running along the south here. And again, you can see the solar panels. And you can see that the surrounding area to the east and south of the site is quite covered by trees along the boundaries of the site. And again, there's the existing access that runs to the existing use within the applicant's ownership. And then this is just a closer up view of the application site again. So Thornhill is running along here. This is an existing access to the north of the site that runs along the north of the boundary. And then you can see again the solar panels off to the left. And then just some photos. So these are taken from Thornhill looking into the site. So the application site is on the left-hand side here. So coming from the north towards the south, that's the site there. Then again, that's the application site there. This is the access that runs along the northern boundary of the site. And then this is again the application site on the right-hand side here. So you can see there's some vegetation along the side of the road and some tree planting that exists along the frontage as well. And then again, this is the application site on the right-hand side here. And then a further view, and this is the now the southern corner. So again, the application site is here, and the existing access into the site is off the screen to the right-hand side. So the proposal is for 50 holiday lodges and 20 touring pitches. So the grey squares are the around in like 3 lines around the edge of the site are the holiday lodges. Towards the centre of the site is the swimming lake in this area here that's white. Then there's a 2-storey hub that's in this location here, which would contain the reception area, cafe, shop and studio space, and some office space. And then in this location here is the gym with a pool, inside pool area and sauna. The 20 touring pitches are located to the north of the site here, so each of these white squares is one of the touring pitches, and then you can see the parking area is located in this corner here. So the access to the site would be from the northern existing access. So this again is Thornhill along the left-hand side here, and this would be the access into the proposed site. So it's a different access to the existing access to the wedding venue site. It's that one's off to the south, and this one is the access to the north. In terms of the principle of development, the principle is supported by policy. So policy SB24 is the countryside policy, and it provides a list of different uses that are supported in principle, and one of those is rural tourism and leisure development, and that's then subject to the scale, size and form of the development, but in principle it is accepted that that would potentially be in a countryside location. The other policy that supports the principle is policy E08, which is self-catering tourism accommodation. So that would support this, being that these are self-contained holiday lodges and again the caravan pitches. The tourism manager was consulted as part of the application, and she fully supports the scheme and says that there is a gap in the quality of accommodation and experiences in Thanet, which this proposal would fill. And therefore this proposal is considered to significantly contribute to Thanet's economy and provide economic benefits through the creation of jobs and the associated tourism benefits for different facilities around here as well. So whilst the proposal does include the cafe, shop and gym, which would on their own typically be considered town centre uses, it's obviously viewed as a sort of overall as part of the tourism benefits of the site, which would support the users of the existing site and would potentially prevent people from having to leave the site as much with their cars, given that there would be shops and the cafe within the site itself. So in terms of principle, that is considered to be acceptable. In terms of agricultural land, it will result in a loss of agricultural land, and the information submitted shows that this would be grade 1 agricultural land, which is best and most versatile agricultural land. When considering the 3 criteria of the policy, the proposal is considered to be contrary to criteria 2, which requires an assessment of alternative sites to be submitted, so looking at sites of lower quality. The applicant has advised this is because they're considering the site needs to be next to, or should be next to, the wedding venue and forms part of a larger facility, but we consider that there is the opportunity that this could have been an independent use, and therefore the assessment should have ideally been submitted. In terms of criteria 3, that looks at the overall agricultural holding and the impact on viability of the agricultural holding. So this site forms only 2% of the overall holding. The applicant has submitted correspondence to suggest that the continued use of the site for agricultural use is not viable, but we've not really had any further details demonstrating why that is. So again, there is some concern that doesn't actually comply with criteria 3. And then criteria 1 is just the balanced criteria where we're looking at the benefits and whether they outweigh the harms. So in this case, there would be the tourism benefits that are being offered, and that then needs to be weighed against the harm from the loss of the agricultural land, and that is a balance for the final sort of determination of the application when considering all other factors. In terms of the impact on the character area, so the site does lie within the landscape character area and it is visible in long views. I'll just show you some slides now of how this will look. So this shows the different lodges within the site. So there's 3 different size lodges, a studio lodge, a one-bed lodge and a two-bed lodge, and then of those there's a mix of materials, so there are a variety of different styles of lodges. So this is just showing the mix of the sizes across the site. So you can see there's quite a mix between those three sizes. And then this is the design of one of the lodges, so the smaller lodges. So you can see that this is the material palette for the lodges. So there would be a mix of natural timber cladding, both vertical and horizontal on different lodges, and then also the use of black timber cladding as well. So all of the lodges are single story in height. They would have a ridge of around 5 metres in height. So this is an example of one of the lodges. So this would be the one-bed unit. Sorry, just double-checking. So that's the one-bed unit appearance. This would be the layout of it. So you can see the bed at the back, bedroom at the back, and then a living kitchen room at the front. Then this would be the larger lodge, so the two-bed lodge, and again that's the appearance of that lodge. And then again you see this would be a larger footprint with the 2 bedrooms at the back and the larger communal area to the front. And then this is the smaller lodge, again similar in appearance, front elevation, and then this would be the studio lodge, so no separate self-contained bedroom within that unit. In terms of the other facilities, this is the hub, so this is the 2-storey building. So you can see part single storey, part 2-storey, again with the similar materials with the cladding, and that's the side and rear elevation of that building, and then just a visual of how that building would look. You can see the green roof added to the flat roof part of the single storey element. And then in terms of the ground floor, so this would be the reception and cafe area on the left hand side here, with a shop on the right hand side. And then within the roof space there would be some office and meeting space. And then that's the roof plan. And then this would be the gym. So this is single storey, although slightly higher ridge, so that's the front elevation, and then the rear elevation again with the same cladding materials, and then the side elevations, and then that's the layout of the gym. So you've got the gym on the left hand side, and then the connecting building has a cold and hot pool area, steam and sauna room, and some changing facilities. And then this is a section of the development. So this runs like through the centre of the site. So you can see the swimming lake within the centre here, and the lodges extending around it, and then the hub on the right-hand side of the screen. So in terms of the impact on the surrounding area, the views are quite concentrated, really, more from Way Hill looking into the site. So from the north and from the east, the A299, these are the views that you would get from both. So because there's bunds that exist along the edge of the road, you really wouldn't see into the site or see the distance of that impact. And also you can see that there's also the trees that run along the edge of the boundary as well. So even from these positions, you wouldn't really see beyond it. And then this is lower level than A299 to the top. So the main impact really is looking from Way Hill from the west across to the application site, and this is that view from Way Hill. So this is the application site in this location here. So Thornhill would be running along here, and you can see these few trees at the front here which form the front boundary of the site. So that's it, one time of year, and then just another one zoomed in from a different time of year. So you can see that in terms of the distance, the site does change in level, so you would be able to see into the site from a distance, and therefore there is some visual impact as a result of that. However, a landscape impact assessment has been submitted with the application. It's looked at mitigation from new planting, and it's also looked at the fact that the site is surrounded on 3 sides by woodland and hedgerow, and therefore in terms of the impact, whilst if it was a site that was completely open and you could see from all directions, there would be sort of more of an impact, but in this case it's actually quite an isolated site with minimal views through, with the backdrop of the trees around to all boundaries as well, which does limit the long views into the site. So in just terms of landscaping there, and this is the landscaping plan submitted with the application, so there's a bund proposed along the boundary with Thornhill on the left. So there'll be new tree planting and hedge planting, and then behind that a bund that also contains trees, so a significant amount of landscaping to that boundary, which really would screen views into the site. And there's also further areas of woodland tree planting to the front here, and then there's lots of wildflower planting around the edge of the site. So just to show you that in more detail, so that's the north of the site. So these were the touring plots along the north here, with the parking area on the right here. This was the hub and the gym, and you can just see that there's lots of tree planting proposed around the site. And then to the south of the site, again, you've got the suds with the attenuation basin here. And then moving towards the front boundary, this is just a detailed view of that front boundary. So again, you can see the hedge and the tree screen along the front, and then the bund behind it, which would limit those long distance views into the site. So it's considered that whilst there will be some urbanising impact from the proposal, a rural location is basically expected for a facility such as this. So there is always going to be some visual harm as a result of this form of development. And in this case, it is quite an isolated plot given the screening that's around it, and it is associated with existing built form, with the existing wedding venue and neighbouring properties and farm area. So it is considered that given that the impact is mainly just from the west, and that there would be that planting to the front of the site, that would really mitigate the visual harm and the impact on the landscape character area. In terms of living conditions on neighbours, sorry, I haven't got the right slide up here. So the nearest neighbours are these 4 cottages in this location here, and then a neighbouring property in this location here. So a noise impact assessment and management plan have been submitted with the application. And it's looked at the fact that the main noise from the proposal would be from the communal buildings. Environmental Health has looked at the submission. They don't consider there to be any objections, but have recommended conditions that put controls on music and level of noise from plant, and have recommended the implementation of the management plan, and therefore they don't consider there would be any impacts on the neighbours. So I know that obviously some concerns have been raised from the neighbour who has spoken. Obviously the concern is from this access road here, but the actual site is going to be accessed from a different access road. In terms of like noise, obviously that has been covered through the noise impact assessment. So, and there's obviously no other issues in terms of light or outlook or overlooking, given the distance as well and the single story nature of the development. So in terms of the impact on highways, so concern was originally raised by KCC Highways that a lack of information had been submitted to prove that wouldn't be a significant impact on the junction of Grimsdale Hill and Thornhill and Cotton Road. Additional information has been submitted by the applicant that looks at the historic way in which the site has been used, and the fact that Thornhill and Wayhill did originally extend onto what is now the A299 to the north, and that this would have been originally a through road. And the evidence that they've found is that there would have been originally 3,800 movements along that road in the way it currently is, with a single lane and lack of passing bays. And even with that extent of vehicle movements, there was only identified as two collisions over that time, which is obviously quite low. So now with the fact that these have been sort of blocked off, and all you can do now is go up to Thornhill, and it basically just loops back round, and therefore isn't a through road anymore. It is considered that there would be much less vehicle movements than that historically. So the existing wedding venue use generates potentially 73 vehicle movements, and it has been suggested that with the new holiday lodges there would be up to 248 vehicle movements of across the year on a daily average. Obviously that's significantly below the 3,800 that has historically existed along there. So KCC have removed their objection and advised that they wouldn't be able to, based on this additional evidence, they wouldn't be able to justify that there is a significant impact on highway safety. And then, as mentioned, obviously the access into the site itself is existing and considered to be adequate in terms of visibility displays. And in terms of actual parking within the site, there is parking of 76 spaces, which is considered adequate to serve the development. So, sorry, just showing you this. This was the plan of the original layout of the two roads and them connecting onto the road to the north. And obviously now that disconnected with that as the bund that runs through the between the two. So the impact on highways is considered to be okay. In terms of biodiversity, the site is considered to be of low ecological value as it's mainly cropland with some hard standing. Most of the trees, hedges and grassland are being retained within the site. Part of the site is a reptile mitigation area which has been delivered through the previous application, and it's looking to maintain most of that with a mitigation strategy for reptiles to be submitted because they have identified slow worms and common reptiles on the site when carrying out the assessment. A wintering and breeding birds survey has been carried out, so 1 year of surveys has been submitted, and whilst they did identify 1 or 2 birds on the site, there wasn't a significant number, and they consider that's probably likely to be because of the fact that the site is between the solar panels and existing residential and wedding function use and farmland in terms of the farm buildings, and therefore they don't consider that this land is probably, that's why it's probably not used much by birds, but surrounding areas were found to be much higher. So KCC have raised no concerns with that, subject to safeguarding conditions, and consider the site not to be functionally linked land. In terms of biodiversity net gain, the 10%, minimum 10% has been achieved on site, and therefore that deals with the concerns to do with impact on habitats. There's no concerns regarding air quality, drainage or archaeology. That's all dealt with by safeguarding conditions, and the applicant has agreed to the delivery of a unilateral undertaking to secure the contribution of 16,972 towards a special protection area. That's been submitted in draft form yet, so the reason the application is deferred and delegated is for the final submission of the signed agreement. So on balance, there is some visual harm, but it's considered that that is mitigated by the landscaping scheme proposed. There will be loss of best and most versatile land, but there also will be strong economic and tourism benefits from the proposal. There's limited harm on other aspects, highways, biodiversity, these are all dealt with, and therefore on balance it is considered that the benefits of the tourism use do outweigh the harm, and therefore it is recommended to be deferred and delegated for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start off with one question. Can we go back to the slide that we've just had? You moved your mouse rather quick and I couldn't see where you moved your little arrow too quick for me to see where the neighbouring property is. So could you show me where that is?
So I'll just go to the zoomed in one, which is a bit clearer.
That's clear, that's good.
Right, so that's zoomed in there. So I believe the neighbour is in this location here at the south.
Right,
here.
okay.
So yeah, so you've got the wedding venue there, you've got agricultural buildings here, and then the neighbour here, and then obviously the site is over here.
Show it again because my eyesight's a bit.
So you've got the wedding venue here, you've got agricultural farm buildings here, then the neighbour is located down here, and then obviously the site over here.
Okay, so can you advise how far the neighbour's house is to the main block of the new development? I know where it is, but I just want to know how far it is. Approximately, if you like.
I'll come back on the exact distance in terms of the floor. To the boundary of the site, it's about 100 metres.
Okay.
The closer neighbours, if go back to the site plan. The satellite image. Could you go back to that one? So the report refers to the ones where it says Thornhill on the left-hand side of the access that goes into the sort of industrial buildings that you've got there. Are the closer neighbours, but obviously the neighbouring property is down the access that also goes to those industrial buildings there. So we can find out the exact distance.
It's quite a way, let's put it like that way. So we're talking 80 metres or something?
Well, it's 100 to the boundary of the site.
Yeah. So approximately that. Yeah. Okay. Having read the report, the environmental health are reasonably happy with possible noise invasion for adjoining residents. So they're quite confident. And I see as well there's a restriction on music and etc. So that's good. And the other thing I think that's not been mentioned but is quite important, I think, is that Minster Parish Council have no objections on this application. And knowing Minster Parish Council, I think they would have been quite vociferous with it if they thought it was would be harm to the area. So I just want to hear what others got to say. Thank you.
Councillor Makinson.
I just wondered where the access to the solar panel, the solar farm is, please. Is it the same access road? Yeah. Oh, there's another one parallel.
Then I move on to Councillor Matterface.
Could we go back to the one that you enlarged that Councillor Alban was looking at? So let's just confirm. We know where the neighbours are, the bottom right. We know the wedding venue. There is a road going up past there. Does that road just go to whatever that white rectangle is? Because what was said was that all those going to these holiday lodges would use Lawn Hill. Because my question is that road that goes to right, the name I don't know, does that just stop at the top? Or would there be any access into this new development from that road, which i.e. would take people past the properties and past the wedding venue?
Thank you, Chair. No.
I'm just waiting for them to come in.
There is. It's unfortunately. If I move on to the site plan, it's not shown on here as such, but you can see in the top right-hand side of that image, you can see it does connect all the way around. In terms of, to your point about, does the route, go? Can you go the loop around basically? Yes, it connects. Obviously, the primary route that we expect people to, when they enter the site, is from the top left access, the one that's there at the moment, which is the primary access. There is a condition which relates to a routing strategy to be submitted about for bigger vehicles. But yeah, the aim for this site should be that vehicles are accessing it via the top left of the image there, rather than through the wedding, past the wedding venue and looping all the way around.
So could that be an additional condition? I mean, obviously, the responsibility of telling people how to get there will be with the owner. But if there was a condition that access had to be that way, would that not remove some of the concerns of, is that feasible?
Well, it's not a condition that would really stand up to that much scrutiny, unfortunately, because one, it's about enforcing it. Two, it's about how you physically restrict it, when actually there's not necessarily a harm in terms of the idea of if you've accessed it via, again, the top left of the image here, going that way into where the wedding venue car park is, for example. Ultimately, it will be down to the management of the site. We have obviously got the routing strategy as well, and the signage that needs to be submitted. But it is something that, it needs to be, it does need to be looked at. And I think just to pick up some of the points that have been raised about I suppose, existing operation, because I think it's not relevant to the determination of this application, but therefore it is important, as I know members will appreciate. But I think obviously with that application there were conditions, there were safeguards, and if those safeguards are not being followed, then that is subject to a separate enforcement investigation, and that's something that we can look at both from an environmental health perspective about statutory nuisance, but also in terms of compliance with planning conditions. So that's not going to change with this proposal. It's just that this proposal, from the facilities that have been provided, are considered to not result in detriment, with the management plan being required to be complied with for noise.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to have a couple of things to clarify, please. The highways, original highways report, they raised a holding objection that was related to improving visibility at a junction with Thornhill. I think it's Thornhill with the Cottingham Road, Grimsall Hill. So it says without sufficient improvements to the visibility of that junction, they raise a holding objection. So it's just to help me understand, really. So I don't think they've, rather than do that, rather than propose improvements to that junction, they've actually said that they're going to direct people different ways so as the larger vehicles don't have to use that junction. Is that correct?
So there is a routing strategy about large vehicles, but that's not primarily the submission that came in. The response that the applicant put forward related to evidence about the lack of incidents at that junction, specifically in the last period of time, but also over a larger number of years when there were more movements. So as Emma outlined, originally this was an access Thornhill that ran all the way up to the main road with about over 3,000 daily movements on that particular junction, and that was actually from KCC's own evidence, which was put together for the building of the new Seven School roundabout and of that whole rerouting that's occurred there. So it was an argument more about that actually the visibility at that point was acceptable, and as part of that scheme, KCC did not put forward and bring forward any additional improvements to visibility as part of that wider scheme. So they haven't proposed anything there. There were submissions about signage that occurred as part of the actual application for the wedding venue as well. So there was something that was previously looked at in terms of a signage scheme that was being proposed and implemented for slightly effectively reduced speed when you come up to that junction as well, down where Cottington Road meets Thornhill. So and there's also then, as I said, the routing strategy as well. So it's a kind of combination of those factors in terms of the evidence. Obviously, in terms of impact on highway safety, we would rely on the Highway Authority to be able to argue this point, and obviously we've been able to argue that quite successfully further up Grimsall Hill and when you get into Foxborough Lane with regards to the housing development there, but which is why obviously we are putting significant weight on the highway comment here that it is considered to be acceptable, even given their first holding objection.
So that first holding objection they put in was maybe not based on whoever did it, full understanding of what they should have put that holding objection in on. Is my take on it.
I wouldn't disagree with that take.
All right, but we'll take what they. Okay, that's fair enough. All right, and the so-called signage strategy, which is new to me, but that's good. That's got to be approved by yourselves before they can commence any work on the site. The other question I just had was, you mentioned the reptile mitigation area, and in fact I think there were two. There's reptile mitigation areas there related to two previous applications. One I think the adjacent wedding venue, but another one that went back about 20 years. So there's a neutral grassland where the reptiles are housed, and in fact or living. Sorry, not housed. And the report says that actually the reptile report has found slow worms. So can you just re-explain to me anyway? So how that's being dealt with, so that if the area that is the mitigation area currently is being impacted, what's happening with the reptiles that are currently there?
So there was originally a mitigation area within the site, or that linked to a neighbouring application. So through this application, they're looking to keep the majority of that, but then through this application, they've also done studies anyway to see whether there's anything actually within the site, and they've identified a number of slow worms and common reptiles. So obviously we'd need to be protecting those within the site itself. So the condition that's been proposed is for a reptile mitigation strategy to be submitted, and then through that we would be looking at exactly where those are going to be relocated to. So they would just basically go onto the site, move them into the receptor site, and then I think there's within the KCC comment they would look about fencing to try and make sure that they stay there and don't come back onto the site, so obviously they'd be more at risk if they did. So that's all included as part of the requirements for the strategy that will be coming in.
That'll be somewhere on that site, they'll be moved. I mean, I know reptiles probably don't live that long, so they won't have been moved multiple times, but yeah, I just worry when we mitigate something for a previous application and we place it somewhere, we then get another application coming along and they have to keep moving them on.
I mean, what's interesting is that it is a Grampian condition that we've put on. So whilst some of them would be prior to operation, the strategy has to come in prior to any development occurring on the site. The area that's in question is one of the areas is actually right at the north of the site, next to the existing access road that's already there. So the aim has got to be that there is an improvement in terms of the environment over and above safeguarding as much as possible of what's already on the site. That's, as you say, as things move on, these things can be forgotten in terms of what a condition has been put on a previous application and the offsetting that's occurred. Obviously, in this instance, we are in a different situation now because of biodiversity net gain and the expectation of when a habitat management and monitoring plan is going to come in that's going to outline how for the next 30 years post completion of development the environment is going to be maintained with the periodic reviews of that plan. So that will also feed in and have to link to that reptile strategy as well. So safeguards have got better, so we would hope that would be something that's brought through. And obviously we'll be using KCC, obviously, for giving us the comment when we get the strategy in prior to any development commencing to ensure that the provisions are in place for the translocation, etc., if needed on the site.
Thank you. Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I think I'd start off by saying that I do have sympathy for residents when something big comes along in the near vicinity of their homes. It's always a challenge, and I say that as someone who's recently got a new housing estate being built on my very quiet street. So I do understand what that's like, but my view is actually these things seem a lot worse before they happen than they actually are in reality. I stayed somewhere like this in Cambridge a few weeks ago, and I genuinely thought this is the kind of development that Thanet needs. It's really important for us that we have local opportunities for young people to work, for anyone to work. This kind of development, for me, is really positive with the biodiversity net gain. It's very positive in terms of generating overnight stays. I think probably one of the biggest misses we have as Thanet is visitors to the island arrive and they go home on the same day rather than digging their hands in their pockets for a few days. So I see this as a real boost for the local economy. I think I have a couple of questions though. One is, actually I have one question, and that is whether the facilities here would be available for people who aren't staying. So is there, potentially it's more traffic arriving. Is there potentially for this to be used by local people? Or is that not a point for...
It's not something that's been included as part of the application as to whether that would happen. Obviously it'd be down to the applicant to decide. All we've got is a condition saying that before the facilities can be used, we have to make sure that the holiday lodges are there, to make sure that we don't just have a cafe and shop built on the site and don't have the holiday lodges to go with it. So there's that condition. But otherwise, in terms of who can actually access it, that will just be down to the applicant to decide.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wing.
I mean, I'm a regular user of Centre Parks once a year with up to 21 of my family, the youngest being 2 and the oldest being in her 80s. And a site like this, you dump your stuff at Centre Parks and then you can't believe there's thousands of people on site and it's very peaceful. But the issue I have with this, and there are so many positives, I mean, the net biodiversity gain, I'm glad there's hedgerow because they're often forgotten. We just think it's about trees, but hedgerows are really important as well. The water and wetlands is another site. I know it would be an area for people to swim in, but there'll also be other creatures living in there. But I've got two issues that are about movements, one of traffic and one of people. And it is about, is this site linked to the other site? Because the other site is a wedding venue. So if you imagine there's a wedding of, I don't know, 100 people, and 50 of them are staying here, and they're at the wedding venue late at night, and then they travel late at night, possibly after 12, or at 12, they travel across here on foot because they've clearly been, most of them will have been drinking, although a lot of people are giving up. How do they get safely across? And we all know what a few drunks on your street are like late at night. I live 2 doors down from a pub. It's not a big issue, but it can be an issue. What is the safe walking route? So I guess what I'm saying is there's 2 issues with people who are under the influence. Is there a route that's safe for those people? We don't clearly want them walking down the road late at night. And is there a safe route which limits the impact on the neighbours? Because clearly this is a rural location and noise carries. So that's my first question.
I mean, there is no direct pedestrian route shown between the two. Sorry, hang on. Go back to this plan. So yeah, there's no direct pedestrian route shown on this plan between this site and the wedding venue, which is on this location here. Obviously, there's that access route that we mentioned earlier that you could, from the car parking area. Sorry, go back up to this one again. So from the car parking area here, obviously the venue's here. You could walk to the car park and then walk round to it. I don't know how well lit that is, so I don't have any information on the lighting. Obviously, it's all within the applicant's ownership, so they have the ability to create a pedestrian link. It wouldn't need any permission to create a pedestrian link from the holiday lodge site to the wedding venue site in the future if it was found that there were lots of people from the wedding staying on the site, because that would make sense. There would be a pedestrian link between the two. So yeah, they would have the opportunity to do that, but that would be the quickest route. You wouldn't expect people to walk back onto Thornhill and around, which clearly would be more of an unsafe route.
So is that something, I mean, the person's in the room, so I guess what I'm saying is that needs to be a consideration if the 2 sites are linked. And clearly this site is the planning application, but if the other site is linked to this planning application, there is a knock-on. I've towed a caravan for years, and going down a single track road with no passing points is something you try to avoid. So can you tell me, if I'm towing a caravan and coming to this site, how would I get in on that big map?
I mean, part of this is the condition about the routing strategy, because what we're actually trying to understand is, obviously, in terms of ensuring that there is a route to get to the site. Obviously, you have actually got, there's just off shot, there's the Wayside Caravan Park, which is around the corner, and whilst that's mainly statics, there are obviously, this type of facility is found around this type of lane. I absolutely agree that there is a question about the turning. That's why, obviously, the aim here is to get in the access that's the north west of the site at the top there. The question, which I'm afraid we don't have information about, whether or not the best route would effectively be along Weyhill or along Thornhill, both of which are single lane, and Weyhill obviously has many more properties on it. So that effectively, doesn't create any necessarily automatic conflict. We're talking about 20 as well, and obviously not everyone's going to arrive at the same time. So in terms of vehicular conflict, it wasn't considered by the Highway Authority that there'd be a huge problem, but ultimately that is something that we do need to resolve through planning conditions to get a routing strategy to understand what the plan is.
I mean, I don't know, I know 7 score on that area and I've cycled quite a lot of this, so I'm making the assumption I would go down the 299, turn right at Canterbury Road, which is all fine in a caravan, come down, and then obviously, is it Cottingham Road? I'm going to turn at Cottingham, come up there and go up Thornhill, which, you know, that bit of the journey is all fine, but if then it goes to single carriageway, and it can all be mitigated by introducing some passing points of which one place is actually the owner's land. I don't know what the other route is because we can't see the map. I would assume that other route is a lot more complicated. Towing a caravan, I'd be choosing a route that would give me dual carriageway or easy road for the longest period of time, and then so the only sensible route for me looking at that map would be down and then up there and up there. And I can't believe, I mean, it is only 20 caravans, but if they're just stopping overnight, it could be, it's not just 20 caravans, because if we've got 20 caravans arriving every day and stopping overnight, there's the potential for 20 caravans a day, and a caravan stuck in that with an inexperienced tower that doesn't know how to reverse, you are stuck. The whole road is blocked, so that is a concern. I mean, I appreciate that they're going in the top bit, which again is a really tight turn for a caravan, so there needs to be, and again it's the owner's land, there needs to be a curve going round the top of that site to enable vehicles that are towed to come in easily and go out easily. And they're simple things that can be sorted, but they're things that could create real issues. So for me, it's the movement of people between the potential movement of people between the two sites and the impact on neighbours, but also the safety of those people moving between two sites, bearing in mind they may have had a drink, and also how caravans are actually getting in. But it seems to me there are possible mitigations to these problems.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, to your point, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the route. I mean, the Cottington Road off the 7 score roundabout is certainly wide enough in terms of there. Obviously, the width and the top left of the drawing here, it does show that even with a single lane working, there is an area that you could potentially do the right-hand turn into it. I agree. It does obviously rely on someone knowing what they're doing, as we would expect for any road user that's got that and is towing that. But I better not comment on that anymore. But I think the point about Thornhill itself being a single lane, I agree it's relevant in the sense that there are no passing spaces on that. But now, in comparison to how it used to be, we are now talking about potentially 70 daily movements on the road daily. So the chance of conflict is minimised. I'm not saying there's not going to be, but it would simply not have any impact on the free flow of traffic for a wider sense to cause a wider impact on the network. It is inconvenient though, and I'm sure that the applicant, if there are opportunities or needs to do this and there is conflict that keeps getting created, can obviously look at creating that. And obviously the Highway Authority will clearly need to just generally be aware of it, obviously, if it does have any knock-on impact in terms of the free flow of traffic further down. But because of it's quite an isolated location, we don't think there's a conflict that would cause, again, that wider harm to the free flow of traffic.
Councillor Matterface.
Can I just point out that this report, Councillor Wing said Cottingham Road, it's actually Cottington, but this report's got Cottingham. It's got Cottingham and Cottington on the same page. Now, the only Cottingham Road I know is actually in Hull. I don't think, maybe the person who wrote this went to Hull University because that's where Hull University is based. But it's Cottington Road, and I agree with you. Obviously, you're going to have to come down along the road, turn at 7 score. I've never been in a car towing a caravan, so I can't comment. But yeah. Sorry? You won't get a bus up there. I don't think anybody coming to this site is going to need a bus, so we'll be okay on that one. But yeah, it's an error in the report.
Councillor Makinson.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. If you're staying in one of these lodges, can you drive your car up to the lodge? or do you have to park in the car park? Is my first question.
I think it looks like it's possible to do so. I would say, however, it's not a planning matter that we would be concerned with, I suppose.
My second question is, did I see, very small print, that the roofing material of the lodges was rubber tiles? Yeah. And will you see a sample of that before? No. It's a bit unusual, is it? Might be right.
Sorry, bear with us.
Yeah, in terms of what this says, it's natural timber cladding vertical, natural timber cladding horizontal, black timber cladding vertical and black timber cladding horizontal, and then that's the rubber slates. Yeah, and then, recycled rubber slate, look at the word recycled in there as well. And then that's the decking. And then these three colours here are the colours that run round the outside of the cabin. So each of them, there's different colours of green, red and dark grey that run around each of them to just give a bit of interest.
So will you actually see a sample of these roof tiles? Because they're quite important, actually.
So there isn't a samples condition. Ultimately, we are taking account of the fact that there will be a landscape visual impact, from seeing the site, from development being on the site. Because of the nature of these roofs and the colour and texture, it is obviously a bit more akin to an agricultural building that you would normally see on the landscape. So we haven't asked for samples because we've got quite a lot of detail in here. So we haven't asked for it at the moment. If members are particularly concerned about the materials, then obviously at the moment we're not proposing that it's necessary, but obviously if members did feel it was absolutely necessary, then obviously you could vote accordingly to vote down the motion, then add the condition on. I'm just conscious if I can just correct an error that I made earlier to Councillor Wing's point with regards to the vehicular movements. When I was talking about 73 vehicular movements, that's the existing. When you add in the use of that road from all of the uses around there, you get up to a figure. There's basically an increase in 175 movements from this. Just to clarify that point because I wasn't clear earlier.
I think we've reached the end, and I'm just going to make my own comment, and I'd just like to follow up on Councillor Bright's comment that this does appear to be actually quite a relatively upmarket provision that we don't have very much of in Thanet, and I like that, and a genuine tourist provision. I just think that the vehicular movements, although there will be an increase with the tourist provision side, if they are providing accommodation for the wedding venue, then on wedding venue nights there will be less taxis coming and going very late at night if people are walking back. So, depending on how it's used, I think there are some slight mitigating factors with that. So that's just my thought, adding on to what has been discussed. At which point, I now will put the motion for the officer's recommendation to defer and delegate to the vote. Would those in favour please indicate? And anyone against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much, that's carried. At this point, we've reached my benchmark of 8:45 for a short adjournment, which we will now do. Don't frown at me. And just to say that the next bit is where the Cabinet members would leave, but I'm not going to ask you to, and I will explain that in a minute. So we have 7 minutes. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wright, we're just about to restart, and Councillor Matterface, thank you. Just so we can get going as quick as we can, thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. So that has concluded the public speaking for this meeting. At this point, I would normally ask the Cabinet members who have declared an interest to leave the room. However, it's for one very, very short item, and I would just remind you that obviously you do not have a vote in this next item. So I will now call upon the clerk to read out the remaining planning applications. If a member wishes to reserve an application, will they please call out as the clerk reads?
Thank you, Chair. There's just one item, which is AO1 Stena Court, Manston Road, Ramsgate, and that's the only one.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Matterface, and seconded Councillor Makinson. And all those in favour? Thank you. I will ignore Councillor Albin's vote. That's carried. So, agenda item 5, a planning application for 2 Lindenthorpe Road Broadstairs. The planning applications manager will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So,
Can I just a point of order, Chair? Can I ask? I mean, there was 3 applications, and the 3 applications are whether we have a right to call either one in. So why are we discussing that when you've not asked if that wants to be called in?
Is there a reason?
There's no public speaking.
sorry, can I just, in terms of this one that we're just about to talk about?
Yes.
So this is an agenda item because it's being brought back following members previously agreeing to defer for approval. I mean, can I just lead into my presentation? Is that okay?
Yeah, but all I was going to say was there is a decision on the report for approval. So I'm just confused why we're discussing it.
So the application was voted to approve previously, but subject to a legal agreement being submitted to secure biodiversity net gain because of the significant improvements that are being proposed on site, specifically with regards to the tree habitats that were being created. So they're currently in poor condition because they have non-native species. The proposal to be able to get 10% on site includes the removal of non-native species and additional planting. And now, previously, when the application was heard, the recommendation from members, from officers, which was agreed by members, was to defer for approval subject to getting that legal agreement in which would secure biodiversity net gain on site and clarification with regards to the SAM's contribution with an existing unilateral undertaking. The reason it's come back is because the applicant has submitted a habitat management and monitoring plan, which is the next step, which actually usually comes after the determination, and has basically stated that this is the intention, and they've asked for that to be considered, to be effectively conditioned, and then we've then asked KCC their view of that. They have confirmed that it can be secured by way of condition and not as by legal agreement. So that's why we have to bring it back to you, because it's a different motion to what you've already agreed. And almost to demonstrate to you that we don't just do things without delegated authority, we have to bring it back, because obviously ultimately the action is different to what you've agreed. So we consider that the safeguarding condition that is put on, it's actually condition 19, apologies, the report says condition 18, which, and I have included as an annex the actual habitat management and monitoring plan, is looking to secure the measures that you can see on this plan here. So it does include that condition, the requirement that prior to the development actually occurring, the habitat plan, management and monitoring plan, needs to be updated, because in that plan that you will have seen, it doesn't identify who the developer is and who the actual management company is going to be. That's got to be updated. It's then got to be reviewed and updated prior to a year after completion, 3 years after completion, 5 years after completion, 10 years after completion, and every 5 years after that up to 30 years. It is the case that a lot of the tree improvement works that are going to occur are going to basically hopefully come to fruition within 5, 10, 15 years, so it's not actually the full 30 years. But we do therefore need to do more monitoring earlier on, so there is monitoring that's occurring at 1 year, 3 years, 5 years as things go. But it is our recommendation that the application can now just be approved without getting the legal agreement, but subject to the additional condition and also because of the habitat management and monitoring plan that's been submitted. We've also confirmed the ownership of the site, so the unilateral undertaking securing the SAMs for the additional dwellings is considered to be sound, so it will secure that contribution. Thank you, Chair.
And that was, in effect, the report. So I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments? No. In that case, we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. So it's agenda item 6. Yes. So agenda item 6, which is the point at which the Cabinet members need to leave, because this is the TDC application remaining. So thank you. All right, thank you very much. The Planning Applications Manager will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a scheme that's become before members before for 12 houses. We have a non-material amendment application which is making what we consider to be non-material changes to the scheme. So this is the site on Tomlin Drive. You've got a number, I appreciate it's a bit small, but a number of dwellings but basically being fitted in that site. A number of you will recall it. So this is the development here, and it's really on these parking court garage areas where there is proposed to be dwellings constructed. So the only changes that were being put forward as non-material were between the existing the fence that's going to be 1.8 metres that runs the whole length along next to Broadley Road. There were areas basically 4 different areas where they'd proposed to put 1.4 metre high mesh fencing between the gaps. It's put forward as a non-material change to make that 1.8 metres to match the fence either side. Given the scale of the development that we're talking about and the scale of the site, even though it's an increase in height, it is considered that that change is non-material. And also the only other change that's being made is in front of 2 Tomlin Drive. It's a change to the parking arrangement. So because of the presence of utilities infrastructure, there were 2 car. Actually, I think there we go. There were 2 car parking spaces that were where the mouse is going round, and now they've been relocated to this area here, just because of utilities infrastructure. So it's very, very much we consider to be non-material changes. Has to come before members because it's a council application, though. So the recommendations for approval.
I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Do I have any questions? In which case we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you very much. That's carried. And that concludes the business for the meeting. Thank you for your attendance and for everyone watching online, and good night.